hear you. I know. Today.
Call meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Upper Similkameen Indian Band. We get an adoption of the agenda. Seconder?
I'll second.
Any additions? All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the April 19th, 2021 regular meeting of council minutes.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder. Councilor Elliott. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried. Petitions and delegations. We have KPMG here to give us the 2020 financial statements. It's all yours.
Good evening. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to join you tonight. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
My name's Brent Ashby. I'm a partner with KPMG, and I'm going to go through the 2020 financial statements for the Town of Princeton, and I'll give you the highlights of the financial results for 2020. You can follow along in your agenda package. Hopefully you can maybe move right now to the Auditor's report, which is a few pages into the financial statements. And right at the start of the Auditor's report, we provide our opinion on the consolidated financial statements for 2020. And our opinion is that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. In other words, an unqualified opinion for your 2020 financial statements. If you move past the auditor's report, which is a few pages long, we'll get to the statement of financial position. And the statement of financial position shows the assets, liabilities, and accumulated surplus for the town for December 31st, 2020, and also the comparative year, December 31st, 2019. To hit a few highlights, first of all, you continue to not have any long-term debt, and you have a net financial asset position in excess of $5.8 million at December 31st, 2020. If you look at the top, the financial assets, your cash balance is up about $850,000 over last year to in excess of $4.8 million, and about $3.1 million of that is invested in with the MFA and money market funds. We also see some increase in accounts receivable at December 31st, 2020. About $150,000, and much of that is increased in due to property tax receivables at the year end. Other significant accounts within financial assets, you see land held for resale, just a small change in the balance there, as there was only one small lot sold in 2020. Your long-term investments includes both the investment in 673244 BC Ltd and the Vermilion Forest Corp. And that sits at a balance of $147,000 at the end of the year. And there's loans receivable outstanding on two previous lot sales with a balance of just over $607,000 at the end of the year. So your total financial assets have increased by over $800,000 to just shy of $7.9 million. On the liability side, you can see there's three components making up your liabilities: accounts payable and accrued liabilities, which is up from last year, mainly due to the fact that you were allowed some delay in making your school tax payment to the province. That's gone up in terms of your accounts payable. It's gone up from about $565,000 to about $929,000. Some increase in deferred revenue as well, as you've received some funds for a lighting project at the airport, which is going to be spent in 2021. And the landfill closure and post-closure estimated future costs of the closure of those in today's dollars has gone up slightly to $858,000. So total liabilities, financial liabilities, just over $2 million, bringing you to a net financial assets of just over $5.8 million, as I said earlier. Your non-financial assets, that's made up of inventory of supplies, prepaid expenses, but the largest component is your tangible capital assets. That would be your infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, buildings, land, etc. In the current year, you spent about $1.5 million on new capital additions during the year, and net of your amortization expense of about $1.2 million, you see a change in your balance there of just over $300,000. So at the end of the year, non-financial assets were about $21.9 million, leaving you your accumulated surplus of about $27.7 million at the end of the year. Included in accumulated surplus is reserves of about $5.35 million, unrestricted funds of about $750,000, and then the bulk of that is invested in tangible capital assets of $21.6 million. If we move past the statement of financial position into the statement of operations on the next page, in the left-hand column is your 2020 original budget as passed by council last spring, and then your 2020 actual revenues and expenses, and also in the far right column is your 2019 actual revenue and expenses. So if you look in terms of revenue for the year, total revenue is up about $135,000 over last year. Tax revenue is up about $116,000. Grants are up about $300,000. That's both provincial and federal grants. And included in that grant amount is just over $1 million that was received from the province under their COVID-19 Restart Grant project. And you'll notice when you look through your statements, there is an attached schedule that the province has requested that's added to your statements that shows how you utilize those COVID-19 Restart Grant funds. And just point out that that is an unaudited schedule. It is just a requirement. There's no requirement for us to separately report or do a separate audit on that. It's just simply for information from the province on how those funds were utilized. The other major change in terms of revenues is the land sales, which in 2019 there was 5 land sales, totaling about $677,000. In the current year, there's about $30,000 in land sales. So tax revenue, grant revenue up, also sale of services and rentals up, and then offset by a decrease in land sales. So 7.7 in total revenue is compared with about just under $8.3 million in budgeted total revenue. On the expense side, want to point out that in the expenses that were budgeted, that does not include amortization expense, which is a non-cash expense, and that's about $1.2 million. So if you added in the actual amortization to your budgeted expenses, you'd be very close and just slightly under in terms of your actual expenses just slightly under budget in terms of your actual expenses for 2020. And if you look at that compared to last year, your total expenses are down slightly. And the majority of that change is the fact that you had land sales in 2020 and expensed some of the amounts that were, in 2019, and you expensed some of the amounts that were included in inventory on your statement of financial position. Also, you see some increase in environmental health of about $70,000. The solid waste closure costs line is the change in the balance on the statement of financial position, so that's not a cash item. You've also see some change in water utility costs by about $100,000 over last year. But overall, as I said, total expenses have declined from last year. And after deducting total expenses from total revenue, you see your surplus before the undernoted is about $360,000. That's up from $72,000 last year. Add in other income, which is your share of the profits from the Vermilion Forest Corp. Leaves you with an annual surplus for the year of about $487,000, up from $185,000 in the prior year. So that's the highlights of the financial statements. I'm happy if council had any questions to ask of me.
Anybody have any questions?
And I'll
This one, Brent, sorry, my mic wasn't on. Yeah, Brent, an old counselor here. In the past days that I remember, there was always a line in there that said that the auditors believed that the financial managers of the Town of Princeton did a great job in preparing the information to be passed on to you. It may have been in the past just put in by the financial manager, but I didn't notice one in this one.
I think the audit went very well. I want to thank James and the staff for getting us all the information required to get the audit done in a timely manner. So thanks very much to the staff at the town.
It was anything but serious, as I was talking.
Sorry, I'm not catching. I'm only catching maybe a portion of what you're saying.
He said it wasn't, it was meant in jest.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. I want to thank you for presenting to us tonight.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks a lot, Brent.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good night, everyone, and hope to see you in person soon.
You betcha.
Sounds good.
Stay safe.
Thanks, you too. Good night.
Okay.
He doesn't like your sense of humor.
I don't think anyone ever took me seriously. I used to say it every year.
Okay, so we're going to move on to staff reports now. Active Transportation Planning 2021 grant funding.
So UBCM is offering an active transportation planning grant for 2021. It's used for planning OCPs, and when they talk about active transportation, they're talking about human-powered transportation. So in 2013, the Town of Princeton did a Parks and Rec strategy, and on that strategy, it showed a lot of opportunities for trails, for walking trails, for having neighborhoods, so you could walk from one neighborhood to another or from different parks to other parks. And I think it would be important for us to include it in our OCP review, and this grant would fall within our OCP review and update. It would help offset some of the costs and then enhance some of the things that we would like to do, like including the active transportation. Maybe adding some pictures and making it more user-friendly.
So this would give us a better plan for walkability of the community and
Yeah.
whatnot, right?
For connections between neighborhoods and stuff. And then when you're looking at new subdivisions or new developments, you could incorporate maybe some paths through there, so.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I think last year or something. Remember Ed had some plans and stuff, and it's close to being some great paths and some loops and stuff. I thought it was really a great idea.
Yeah.
Gary, do you have a staff recommendation?
So moved.
Councilor Coyne, seconder. Councilor Willis, any questions on the motion?
Just, no, not on the motion.
Question and answer, go ahead.
My question would be to Carrie and Lyle. Has there been any movement on the road above the Happy Hut by the Bottle Depot in terms of, we were applying to Ministry of Highways in terms of trying to straighten that out so that when you came out of the yard or whatever, or you came down the hill, you went along the bank before you turned, and as a result of that, it gave you a lot more room to see people coming up and gave you a lot of room to turn there. And we had started on that.
So I can speak to that. We do have an engineer's design for that intersection, and what we're waiting for is just Ministry of Transportation approval. And
Okay.
the plan is that we would actually implement that this summer.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Authorized investments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as was talked about by our financial auditor, currently we have 100% of our investments located with the Municipal Finance Authority, and any other town funds are held in our operating account. What I'm asking for council's approval to do is to set a investment policy moving forward. This would give staff the ability to diversify the town's portfolio so that we could take advantage of things that may pay a little bit more interest and benefit the town with extra revenue. It's important to note that the investment policy is very strict. We have to report to council once every 3 months with this policy. We have only 3 authorized funds. Council must authorize any funds that we end up putting funding through. Valley First Credit Union is one of them through their wealth management division. We already do our operating accounts with them. The Municipal Finance Authority is another one. We may use a slightly different product than the money market fund we're with right now. The interest rates are sort of between 0.4 and 0.5% annually. There are different products there that may pay us 0.8 to 0.9%, so we're looking into those. And Canaccord Genuity is another major money manager based in Vancouver. They deal with approximately 50 to 60 municipalities, including the City of Penticton and the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen. So we're dealing with 3 very reputable firms with extremely safe investments, only ones that are listed with the community charter, and we ask that council approve this policy.
So I have a question. By doing this, will it tie up any of the funds that we have available? Will we be able to access them, or will they be under terms, or?
Yeah, it lists it in the investment policy. So with each fund, the minimum amount for each fund would be 20%. The maximum would be 65% to, again, encourage a diversification. But the investments would be placed in what staff would project would be financial needs moving into the future. For example, if we know we're not going to need the money for several years, then we might look at a 1-year term deposit to get a better interest rate. However, if the money is absolutely needed within the next year, then that would maintain at the most a 30 to 60 day a rollover for a term deposit.
Does anybody have any questions?
I find it amazing you can go all the way from 0.4%, 0.4 of 1% to 0.8 of 1%. Whoa.
Major jump, yeah.
Making that money.
Just rolling in.
We have a staff recommendation.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Elliott, seconder. Councilor Coyne. Any questions? Motion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Extension renewal lease agreement, 263 Burton Avenue. Carried.
So the property is west of Subway and the Caboose. There's the parking lot there that we are currently using for community members and tourists to park there and be able to get on the KVR. The lease is up June 30th of this year, and they have requested that we renew the lease for a further 3-year term. Once a year, they invoice us for whatever the property tax amount is, and about and that's what we pay to use the parking lot.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, there's the staff recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Gould, seconder. Councilor Rose. Any questions on the motion?
Actually, I do have a question. The rustic fence that's there, I drive by daily and I see it's, progressively getting destroyed, and I wonder if there's some way of addressing that.
CAO.
Yes, staff have also noticed that it's been damaged, I think due to snow removal or whatever. And so Public Works is kind of looking at, well, first of all, repairs, but maybe provision to help protect it a little bit as well.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking cement blocks or maybe.
definitely on the radar for sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it does not look good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any further questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. 6.4, Princeton District Community Market, Gary.
So this is just a recommendation to waive the fee for the community market. Keeps in line with council's supporting shop local, helping during the COVID time. It's a small amount, but it definitely encourages people to participate in that market, which is good for traffic downtown and tourism. So it's just another, I think it's a goodwill gesture as much as anything else.
Anybody have any questions?
Move the motion.
Thank you. Councilor Coyne moved it, seconder. Councilor Elliott, any questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. 2020 Town of Princeton Financial Statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, as presented by Brent Ashby, our municipal auditor, we present the 2020 annual town financial statements for approval by this council. They are required into the Ministry of Municipal Affairs by May 14th. Thank you to Brent and his staff for making the audit as smoothly as possible under these COVID conditions. Usually we'd have at least 2 auditors, usually 3, floating around the office pulling apart paperwork and driving poor Jeannie and I bonkers for a good week. But unfortunately, due to the restrictions, everything had to be done virtually. So everything had to be scanned, or the electronic copies had to be found and submitted online, and it made it quite challenging for us finance staff. But we survived, and the presentation is as presented to council.
Perfect. Any questions?
So KPMG did a good job?
Yes,
Okay.
it did a good job.
I thought you guys would throw these things back and forth. So moved.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second.
Councilor Gould. Any further questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, 6.6 is the 2021 Sports Plus Agreement.
Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to get out there that as president of the Lacrosse Association, I will be speaking to this motion solely as a director of finance. I will not be answering any questions to do with the lacrosse side of things. So to avoid any conflict.
So all you can ask him are questions referring to
Money.
the financial part of it.
Yes. So
Nothing about the facility itself, other than finance.
well, nothing to do with lacrosse. I can probably answer basic questions on the structure and what it's used for, but I will not be answering anything to do with lacrosse. So we are asking for council support on this project. A letter was received to build a sport box structure next to the existing Princeton Arena. The Lacrosse Association would apply for a community gaming grant in the amount of $250,000 to facilitate 80% of the construction costs of this facility. As the application states, we'd be asking for 10% funding from both the town and the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen for a total fund of $31,000 toward this project. What this is, it is a board outdoor structure similar to what you'd find inside the arena, except it's outside. We would draw, the project would enable to draw lines on the floor for pickleball. It would enable it to draw it for floor hockey or inline hockey. It would enable lines for lacrosse, and it would enable lines for basketball for 3-on-3 tournaments or basketball hoops. It would facilitate somewhere between 4 to 6 individual courts for basketball. Under the long-term vision for this facility, when we build it, we would put piping underneath the floor itself, so that in the wintertime, the existing chiller at Princeton Arena can facilitate 2 sheets of ice, which means that we could generate artificial ice in the arena for both ice hockey and for public skating inside the facility. There are some conceptuals listed there, and there are some mock drops, and including a quote from for a sample that was done for a municipality in Alberta. We're still working on drawing up a specific quote for Princeton, and that can be presented to council as soon as we receive it. For the community gaming grant, we asked council for 2 things. Number 1, we need council's authorization to be able to use public land for this facility. It's a requirement of the community gaming grant. We're not allowed to, or the Lacrosse Association would not be permitted to use public land to build this facility without its permission. As part of the community gaming grant process, it's also required that Lacrosse Association, what they call manage and control the facility for a period of no less than 10 years. So while the lacrosse facility or the Lacrosse Association would be responsible for the facility, obviously the town would have full use of it for anything outside of lacrosse times. The other thing we asked, or that Lacrosse asked for, is for funding for the 10% portion of it. That would be included in the 2022 budget. The intake is between June and August of this year, with a funding announcement in November, so that would preclude building the facility in 2021. It would be a 2022 project, and we would require the funding for the 2022 budget.
Where exactly is it located?
So this is part of what we're waiting for the conceptuals to come back on. Plan A would be to place it between the BMX track and the existing arena. It's on the east side of the arena, so it get a little less sun in the wintertime, causing the ice to melt a little less, and easing access for the ice resurfacer to be able to do the arena and then drive a short distance onto the outdoor rink. If that doesn't work due to space constraints or what we own, then the sport box, the plan B would be to go on the other side of the arena, on the west side, between the skate park and the arena itself.
I didn't see any plan of like what.
And we're still working on that.
And what does the town own, and is there an easement? Because there is that road that goes up to the high school there, so I wasn't sure if there was an easement through there or not.
Yeah, so it looks like it would fit on, in both locations, but we'd have to, do a little bit more detail and maybe even survey.
Yeah, the deadline for applying is August, so this is more just trying to get our P's and Q's together right now to get the hard stuff out of the way, and then the easy stuff. And like I said, we presented to council before we actually drew up the.
Perfect.
Preferred time would be at the end of the ring, so that way we can just drive the Olympia out into the other ring, clean it, and then we don't have to move it around through the parking lot and whatnot.
You're tight on the other end too, so you know.
Yeah, it'd be pretty tight. We lose a lot of parking.
Just one more question on, is there a commitment already from the regional district, or is that something that you're gonna have to?
It's gone to the regional district.
Okay,
Yeah, it passes through their boards too.
okay, good.
Councilor Wilson?
So that 31 would be split with RDS?
Yeah, so no, it's 31 from the RDOS and 31 from the town.
It's a total up to $300,000.
Yeah, it is 80% funding from the province, so 10% had to come from the town and 10% had to come from the regional district.
Any other questions? Councilor Coyne?
I'm sorry, I can't tell by the drawings. Is it have a roof?
It does not have a roof now, but again, the long-term vision To apply lighting and to apply a roof would come at a later time. The first phase of it is just to get the structure up.
So do you envision it being joined right onto the, say, the Posse Lounge sort of thing?
Yeah, it wouldn't be joined on, but it'd be beside or behind that facility, yeah. And then if we do tie into the existing ice plant, the pipes would run behind the arena and tied in. The ice plant upgrade we did, I think it was 2 years ago, is what they call a plate and frame. And so we can actually add more plates in there to increase the capacity. And so there'd be a cost to that, of course, but I mean, it's definitely doable.
And it probably says square feet here. Did you mention that?
I'm sorry? Oh, well, we'd try and get as close to 200 by 80 as we could, but we could go as short as 180 length and still be official, and we might even be able to shave a couple of feet off the sides if we really wanted to.
So our arena is 70 or 80 by
It's,
the arena?
yeah, it's 80 by 185.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it'd be about the same size or a
Yep.
little bit bigger.
Yep. Perfect.
So pretty much just like here, maintenance, right?
Yeah.
With that-
Mhm.
We're hoping that.
With no-
Put a roof on it so you can use it all year.
No, it'd be great. I think we talked about this, didn't we talk about this in our plan?
Yeah, this was talked about in the strategic plan.
Yeah, like with the far, so.
Just like Karamias with no wind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Little nice.
Okay, so we have a staff recommendation, council grant for La Crosse Association, hereafter known as the Association Authority to proceed with the use of public land located on the following property. Civic address 167 Old Heather Road, commonly known as Princeton and District Arena. Lots 2 and 3, plan AAP 4960, District Lot 1297, Land District 54 exempt plan, HA 831, Partnell Road, CPLH 831, this is a long one, G 106656, PID 010-392-114, and 010-392-149, to build a multi-purpose or multi-sport box facility subject to the following terms. The association received all requisite building permits and inspections for the facility. The association will be responsible for management and control of the resulting facility for a period of no less than 11 years from the date of this motion, May 3rd, 2032, and the town will designate which lines are drawn in the facility subject to La Crosse lines receiving precedence, and that staff create a funding agreement between the town and the association for provision of funding up to $31,250 to be included in the 2022 budget subject to the association receiving provincial funding from the Community Gaming Grant Program, and that the mayor and the chief administrative officer be authorized to sign such an funding agreement on behalf of council.
So move.
I would second it with the thought that I would certainly like to see it on the east side. As far as I'm concerned, the availability of parking and everything else for both the arena rooms and the skateboard park, to me, it would be much more advantageous to have it on the other end.
As I said, that is our plan A.
Any other comments or questions? I'll call a motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Council reports. Brooks,
I have no meetings to report right now, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Gould.
I attended the online Silga AGM where our Mr. Mayor was voted in as a director at large, so congratulations. Yeah. And other than that, just a couple online meetings, that's it.
Councilor You were looking at me.
Well, it'll be short. I have nothing to report.
Councilor Elliott.
I don't know why I have so many meetings. Wednesday, April 21st, attended the Princeton Healthcare Steering Committee Zoom meeting along with Mayor Coyne. Later that evening, I attended my first ever Canadian Mental Health Association meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. I was elected the previous month to represent the Similkameen Valley on that board, so that was my first official meeting. Wednesday, April 28th, I had a meeting with the Crimson Tide players at the Visitor Center for what is going to be probably a very fun and unique marketing thing that I can't talk about beyond this. And Thursday, the 29th, my wife and I got our COVID vaccines, and I just wanted to say that I was very pleased with how smooth and organized the system was up at Riverside Center.
Excellent, thank you. April 21st, I attended a SILGA Resolution Committee meeting at 10 a.m. 3 p.m. I had the Healthcare Steering Committee, and at 7 p.m., Council Group was there as well. Attended the Breaking the Stigma public forum. It was a public forum on mental health. April 22nd, I attended the mayor's, as I do on every Thursday, the mayor's vaccine roundtable with Interior Health. And at 1:30, I attended a regional district meeting with the Ministry for Area Food Service and Boundary Consideration Study. So we do, it's called, something to, we'll have a referendum. Another attempt at referendum.
understand this correctly, that you're not going to have a census collector going door to door? Instead, it's 100% online, and people are expected to go online to do this? Okay, all right, because that's not how it read to me when I was reading the details there. Okay.
Well, I was outside, he came and handed me a paper, which I could fill out as far as I know, or it's got the number or the email website to do it online if you want.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, when is it done? That, I'm sorry. It'd be interesting to see.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're asking for adoption of the tax rates bylaw. Again, by the community charter, we must have this submitted to the province by May 14th. We made some changes. We repealed third reading and made some changes, and then adopted third reading at the last meeting on April 16th with respect to the regional district numbers, which changed slightly due to a clerical error on their part. So far, this just supports the financial plan as adopted by council and allows us to move forward with the collection of property taxes for this year.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second.
Well, I wanted to make a comment after you, and I'm making comment without a lot of information, but you may be aware of it. But apparently, I read a certain amount and didn't pay enough attention to it, but the gist of it was that Manitoba and BC are the only ones that are keeping track of, at this point, or releasing the information to do with fully vaccinated people getting COVID. And out of what would seem to be probably a couple million people that have been vaccinated to this point between the two provinces or whatever, something like 6,300. And again, don't nail me on the things. Out of that 6,300, there were probably 50 people that died as a result of getting the COVID, even though they had got whatever. 91% of them, it said, were over 80. And so when I'm talking to people my age and older, my point would be until we get so that we have a high, I think they call it herd immunity sort of thing, until we get to a point where even though you fully vaccinated, until September or so when we've got, you know, fully vaccinated, that we still need to maintain all the things of, especially when you're older, maintain until we get that number.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really good points there. One is if you get your vaccination, it takes a minimum of 2 weeks for your immunity to kick in.
Yep.
The first shot does not give you full immunity, that's why we get a booster. You can still get COVID-19 even though you've been vaccinated for your first shot. The chances of getting sick or surviving, not getting really sick or surviving increases. So that
second.